Hello, everyone. Welcome to another open session. Shivam, kindly switch off your mic. Yeah. So, welcome to this session on environment and ecology conducted by EduBridge IS. So, this is lecture number 2. And today we will talk about ecosystems. What are ecosystems? Then various components of ecosystems. And second part of our discussion would be functions that ecosystems play. Right. So there are many functions which are a kind of work that ecosystems do in the nature. So what kind of functions they are, we'll be discussing that particular aspect in the second subtopic of today's session. Right. So yesterday we have discussed about uh, the levels of ecological organization, right? So we have talked about various levels, and under that we have discussed individual level, population level, and community level. Fine, but you must have studied in economics that there are two branches of economics. One is microeconomics, and other is macroeconomics, right? So the aspects that we have dealt yesterday, that means the study of ecology at the level of individual or at the level of population or at the level of community, so that is you can say a study of ecology at micro level. But in order to understand, one second, a few people are joining, that's why there is some disturbance. Okay, so the aspects that we dealt yesterday, like individual, population, community, they are a kind of study of ecology at micro level. But in order to get the larger view of environment, we should study environment at the level of ecosystem, or at the level of biomes, and or at the level of biosphere. But biosphere being extremely huge ecosystem or giant ecosystem, we generally avoid studying ecology or environment at that particular. Fine. So our focus today will be on ecosystems. What exactly are ecosystem? How ecosystem are important? What kind of role do they play in various balances that are existing in the environment? And tomorrow we will discuss about biomes. Right? It is not advisable to study environment at the level of biosphere because it is extremely huge. You all know it consists of atmosphere, hydrosphere, and lithosphere. So it is not advisable to study ecosystem or biosphere ecosystem. So what we do for the convenience of our study, we divide biosphere into number of ecosystems like forest ecosystem, grassland ecosystem, desert ecosystem, and so on. Right. So today we'll be discussing about that particular aspect of smaller ecosystems. Fine. So let us begin our session. So first, we will be discussing about what are ecosystems. So as the name suggests, ecosystem, it is the system. That means it is a structural and functional unit in the environment. Ecosystem is a system, that means it is a structural and functional unit in the environment. And that unit, that structural and functional unit, is the result of interaction between the living components and the non-living components of the environment. Right. So whenever, for example, whenever there are suppose plant species, they are interacting with the environment, that means suppose abiotic factor, then there is a system that is established with that particular interaction of plants with their abiotic factors. For example, with suppose soil, with suppose atmospheric gases. So plants will be using those gases, plants will be using minerals from soil, and because of that, there will be a harmony or balance in the environment. And that balance is nothing but the system which is existed, which is created because of that particular interaction between plant and their abiotic components. Fine. So what is ecosystem? It is a structural and functional unit under the environment, and that unit is result of interaction between living and non-living components of the environment. Fine. Next, so second point is the actual definition, or you can say the bookish definition of ecosystem. So what is ecosystem? It is the unit of environment. So ecosystem is a unit under larger set of environment. Fine. So the unit of environment where living organisms interact with non-living environment in an orderly, self-sufficient manner is known as ecosystem. So with that particular interaction, what is Mukul Das, kindly switch off your mic, please. Okay, thank you. So with that interaction between living and non-living components, the orderly, self-sufficient system is established, right? And that is nothing but ecosystem. And in order to maintain that balance, or in order to maintain that harmony between the biotic and abiotic components, it is very important to ensure that the resources that we are using, that human beings are using, are not used to an extent that it is leading to the disturbance in the balance that is created by ecosystem. Fine. Next. So this term ecosystem was coined by, or was given by, A.G. Tansley, who is the British botanist. British botanist A.G. Tansley has given this word in 1935. Right. So yesterday we discussed about ecosystem. Ecology. Ecology was the term coined by Ernst Haeckel in 1869, right? And this term consists of ecosystem. This term consists of two words: eco, that means environment, and system, that means the interdependent and interacting communities, organisms that are present in the environment. Fine. So this is just a definition of ecosystem. I hope definition is clear. Ecosystem is a structural and functional system which is a result of the interaction between the components of the environment. Fine. Next now. So as we have discussed earlier, the biosphere is the most large, or it is the largest ecosystem. It is a giant ecosystem. And as we have discussed earlier, it is not feasible to carry out study of biosphere completely, because it consists of all three aspects: hydrosphere, atmosphere, and lithosphere. And that's why, for our convenience, we human beings have artificially divided biosphere into smaller ecosystems. And those ecosystems are in the form of forest, desert, grassland, freshwater, marine, and even, this is important, and even artificial ecosystems like cropland. So even suppose if there is a particular field, and on that field we have cultivated wheat crop, suppose, then that wheat crop, or that land is also an ecosystem. That ecosystem is of wheat crop, right? So even artificial ecosystems are there. And what are artificial ecosystems? You can read the last point on your screen. Artificial ecosystems are maintained by humans by addition of energy. That means we add, suppose, for example, fertilizers, and planned manipulation of the resources. Because of this, natural balance is disturbed regularly. So though these ecosystems, or these croplands, are considered as ecosystem, the balance of those ecosystems is not maintained. Why? Because of human interaction. or because of human interventions. Fine. So because of human intervention, for example, addition of paste or addition of pesticides, it leads to damage to the paste that are present in the that particular land, right? And because of that, we are disturbing balance that is there in the ecosystem, or in the natural ecosystem, to be precise, right? So we have divided ecosystems into number of smaller parts for our convenience. Next, for ecosystem, so there are various aspects that we should consider while studying ecosystem. When we consider ecosystem, we can consider two larger aspects of the ecosystem. They are like structure of the ecosystem. That means what are the components or what are the players who are involved in that particular ecosystem. Along with that, we should also study the function that is being carried out by those components which are involved in the ecosystem. And that's why we'll be discussing that particular aspect of ecosystem, where we'll be discussing about the structure, or you can say the components of the ecosystem. And as we have discussed earlier, ecosystem is an unit under environment, and that's why the structural components of ecosystem will remain same. But here we will be going bit in details in order to study those components. Fine. So the components of environment that we have studied yesterday were biotic and abiotic components. So ecosystem, as it is a unit under environment, the components will remain same. Fine. So what are the components? What can be the components of ecosystem? Firstly, abiotic component, and it is a part of structure of ecosystem, right? And what are abiotic components? Abiotic components are like inorganic substances that that biotic species can receive from soil, or from addition of nutrients by human beings. And what are those inorganic substances? They are in the form of carbon, nitrogen, phosphorus, sulfur, etc. So inorganic substances like carbon, nitrogen, phosphorus, and sulfur, they are abiotic component of the ecosystem. Next would be the gaseous component, right? Or the organic matter or organic material that consists of proteins, carbohydrates, and lipids. Proteins, which are responsible for every task of a cellular life, including cell shape and waste cleanup. Proteins, carbohydrates, which are a source of energy. Carbohydrates, which are a source of energy. And lipids, which are important for deciding structure and function of the living cells. So all these three, proteins, carbohydrates, and lipids, they are considered as organic factor or organic component under abiotic components of the ecosystem. And lastly, so there one question is there. What does standing quantity mean? Standing quantity means the amount of that particular component present in the environment. Fine. For example, we have discussed about inorganic substances like carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, etc. Carbon, nitrogen, sulfur, and phosphorus, etc. So, though the quantity of those minerals or quantity of those inorganic substances present in the environment is nothing but standing quantity of that particular, which is available for the utilization of biotic components, especially plants, because those are the components which are used by plants, right? Fine. So inorganic substances, organic matter, and finally climate. Obviously, we have discussed yesterday that climate plays extremely important role in deciding what kind of life shall exist at a particular location. And under that particular factor of climate, especially we have talked about sunlight and precipitation, right? So those factors are also considered as abiotic components, and those abiotic components have their impact on deciding biotic, what kind of biotic factors will prevail at a particular location, right? So first was abiotic component. Now second component or second part of the structure of ecosystems is biotic component. So under that, it is first, obviously we have discussed yesterday, this is same as yesterday that we have discussed, producers, consumers and decomposers. Only thing that we are discussing or extra is that these are also the components of ecosystem, right? Though we have discussed these components as a part of environment, they are also a part of ecosystem, because ecosystem is a subunit of environment. So autotrophic components, autotrophs means those species which can produce their own food material. So often, not often means it includes green plants obviously, but often there are certain species of bacteria which can produce their own food, and they are called as photosynthetic bacteria, and those are like cyanobacteria and rhodopseudomonas. These kind of bacteria can also produce their own food material, and that's why they are also considered as a part of autotrophic component. Fine. So see, there are certain ecologists who do not consider green plants as producers. They consider green plants only as converters. Fine. So that's why I have used this word, producers or converters. There are certain ecologists who consider green plants as only converters of sun's energy into chemical energy. That's it. Fine. That's why I have mentioned this word, converters. Right. So first was autotrophs. Next is heterotrophs. Heterotrophs means those who cannot prepare their own food and they have to rely on others. That means autotrophs in order to get their food material. They include all the consumers, which can be macro consumers. Macro consumers, like even human beings are considered as macro consumers, or other species like sheep, goats, etc. Fine. But it also includes, though I have mentioned separately decomposers, heterotrophs also includes microorganisms. And microorganisms, they obviously play the role of decomposition. Fine. So decomposers are also biotic component of the ecosystems, and decomposers are called as saprotrophs. Saprotrophs, that means they derive their energy or they derive their food material from non-living organic matter. Non-living organic matter means the organic matter which is dead. For example, dead animals or dead plants, decomposers will act on those dead organic matters in order to derive their food. They are saprotrophs, like bacteria and fungi. Fine. Why not virus? Why we have not included virus in decomposers list? Anyone? It is not entirely considered as a living organism. Fine, fine. Yes. So viruses are neither living nor non-living. Why? Because they need a cell. They need host cell in order to replicate themselves. Fine. And that's why we generally do not include these viruses under biotic component, and thus not under decomposers. Fine. So these are the components, or this is the structure of ecosystem. Fine. Next. But when we talk about structure of ecosystem, we should also talk about the trophic levels, because for the study of ecosystem, the structure of ecosystem, that means especially biotic structure, is categorized or is represented in the form of trophic level. Fine. So what are a trophic level, or what is trophic structure of an ecosystem? Trophic structure of an ecosystem is one kind of producer-consumer arrangement where each food level is known as trophic level. So it is the nutritional relationship between the components of the biotic structure of the ecosystem. Fine. And what does the trophic level represents? Trophic levels represent energy flow in the ecosystem. Trophic levels represent energy flow from trophic level 1 to trophic level 2. There is a flow of energy. Similarly, from 2 to 3 and 3 to 4 and so on. So the representation of flow of energy in the ecosystem can be done in the form of trophic levels. And often trophic levels are shown in the graphical representation as ecological pyramids. Trophic levels are shown in the graphical representation as ecological pyramids. Fine. Now, so what are ecological pyramids? You must have seen the diagram of ecological pyramids. So this is the ecological pyramid you can see on your screen. So it is a horizontal bar of trophic levels. Ecological pyramid is a horizontal bar of trophic levels, but it goes on tapering towards top. Generally or ideally, it should go on tapering towards top. Why? Because the number of because the number of individuals in these trophic levels should decrease ideally. Why? Because the energy, once again there is some disturbance. Because the energy from producers towards top consumers, it goes on reducing. The energy, suppose producers are producing 1000 kilocalories of energy, then all the 1000 kilocalories of energy will not be transferred to second trophic level. Producers will use some energy for their purpose. For example, their respirational loss, for their life cycle, they will use that energy, and part of that energy will be given to the trophic level 2. Similarly, trophic level 2 will use certain energy, and only leftover energy will be transferred to the next trophic level. And that's why the amount of energy is going on decreasing from producers to top consumers, right? And that's why the number of top consumers or number of consumers should also decrease. If it does not decrease, then the balance in the ecosystem will be disturbed. And that's why ideally the pyramid, ecological pyramid, should go on tapering out towards top. Right? So what is ecological pyramid? It is a pyramid which consists of horizontal bars, which is a representation of different trophic levels. Next, the length of each bar represents the total number of individuals or biomass or energy at each trophic level in an ecosystem. Right? So what does length of each trophic level represents in ecological pyramid? It represents the number or biomass or energy that is being transferred from lower trophic level to the top trophic levels. Right? And generally, not generally, always, food producers will form the base of the pyramid. Who will be at the first trophic level? Producers. will be at first trophic level, and the top carnivores will be at the tip of the ecological pyramid. So top carnivore will be at the tip of the ecological pyramid, and in between trophic levels, they will be occupied by different consumers. Next, so this is the ecological pyramid, right? Now, as we have discussed a few minutes back, each trophic level in the ecological pyramid will be a representation of either number or biomass or energy. And based upon the representation that is used, we can classify ecological pyramids into three types. They are pyramid of numbers, pyramid of biomass, and pyramid of energy. Now we'll be discussing these pyramids in detail. So I have not included these in slides. So if you want to write down, please write down or please take running notes of this particular discussion. Fine. So pyramid of numbers. What will be the trophic level signifies, or what trophic levels will be signifying in pyramid of numbers? Obviously, it will signify the number of individuals belonging to a particular species. For example, if we consider trophic level 1, so trophic level 1, as it is of producers, it will represent how many trees are there in a particular environment or in a particular ecosystem. Suppose we are considering a crop ecosystem. Then in that particular crop ecosystem, how many trees are there? Number will be included at the first trophic. Similarly, for subsequent trophic level, what would be the what those trophic levels would represent? They will obviously represent the number of different consumers. Fine. So as this pyramid of numbers is representing the number of individuals in that particular species, can you please tell me? So on your screens, you can see the ecological pyramid. That ecological pyramid is upright ecological pyramid. Fine, right? It is upright. That means it is going means it is tapering out. Fine. So can you please tell me whether it is possible to have inverted ecological pyramid when we talk about pyramid of numbers? Is it possible to have inverted pyramid for pyramid of numbers? Yes, if there is only one tree with many species of consumers depending on it. So only one tree. No. What I am saying, okay, if there is only one tree and no, what I want to ask is like, suppose here in this ecological pyramid, at first trophic level there are trees, or there are grasses which are large in number. Then there are grasshoppers which should be, ideally they should be lesser in numbers. Similarly, frogs should be lesser than grasshoppers, and so on. So this is the upright pyramid. Can you imagine any ecosystem where exactly opposite, or just fold it towards down? That kind of pyramid, is it possible to have? Or let me show you if I have any diagram for that. So suppose, can you see this? Is it possible to have this kind of pyramid, inverted pyramid? So what answer you have given? Let me check once more. Okay, you have said that if there is only one tree with many species of consumers depending on it. Yes, yes, right. So if there is only one tree, and if there are number of consumers that are dependent on that particular tree, then yes, we can say that. But if you talk in the ecological perspective, then there is a parasitic food chain. Parasitic, that means one host and many parasites. So in that particular parasitic food chain, we can say that the pyramid of numbers will be inverted, right? Why? Because we have discussed yesterday the negative interaction called parasitism. And parasitism, in under parasitism, the host is losing on body fluid, and that body fluid is taken up by the parasites, and parasites can be many in them. Fine. So whenever we consider the scenario of parasitic food chain, then we can safely conclude that yes, pyramid of numbers can be inverted in shape. Right? Next, pyramid of biomass. Pyramid of biomass. What is pyramid of biomass? Or what is biomass? Can you please tell me what is biomass? Biomass. The amount of organic matter. Fine. So you can safely say that it is the total weight of the individual from that particular species minus moisture. Minus moisture, total weight of a species minus moisture, or safely in nutshell you can say that dry weight of a species is nothing but biomass of that species. Dry weight. Why we are excluding moisture? Because the moisture is the factor which keep on fluctuating, and that's why in order to get exact amount of weight, we subtract or we exclude moisture. Okay, so pyramid of biomass, what does it represent? It represents the biomass of different trophic levels. And generally in this particular pyramid, you can see the biomass of grasses would be larger, or biomass of producers will be larger than the subsequent species of animals or consumers. That means this is an upright pyramid of biomass. Can there be a inverted pyramid of biomass? Can pyramid of biomass where there is an inverted shape? Can you imagine any scenario where the shape of pyramid is inverted? Yes. For example, in aquatic ecosystem, who are producers? In aquatic ecosystem, producers are phytoplanktons, right? Phytoplanktons. And if you see the size of phytoplanktons, it is very minute. It is very small. But if you consider the consumers in the aquatic ecosystem, the size of those consumers is quite large. Fine. And that's why if we consider the dry weight of producers for aquatic ecosystem, it will be less. It will be less compared to the biomass or a dry weight of consumers. And that's why in aquatic ecosystem, we can get inverted pyramid of biomass. Fine. Next is pyramid of energy. So pyramid of energy, as we have discussed, the producers, they convert sun's energy into chemical energy, and that chemical energy is used for their life processes, and whatever is left is passed on to the next trophic level. So pyramid of energy represents the amount of energy that is stored at a particular trophic level. It represents the amount of energy stored at a particular trophic level. But there is a rule, that rule is called as 10% rule. So what does 10% rule say? It says that only 10% of the energy produced by producers will be transferred to second trophic level. That means primary consumers will only get 10% of the energy produced by trees or producers. Similarly, the third trophic level will get only 10% of the energy that is stored at trophic level 2. Fine. So that is the 10% rule. And that's why, because of this unidirectional flow of energy through trophic levels, the pyramid of energy can only be upright pyramid. It can never be inverted pyramid. Fine. So pyramid of energy, it will always be upright. Fine. So this is very important point when we talk about the flow of energy, which is one of the important functions of ecosystem, which we'll be studying in few minutes. So flow of energy will always be unidirectional. It will always be upright. The pyramid of energy will always be upright pyramid. It can never be inverted. Fine. So this is about ecological pyramids. Now, let us discuss functions of ecosystem. Functions of ecosystems, it is nothing but, see, we human beings are giving it a name as function, but it is not a function of ecosystem. It is the way they operate. It is the way they operate, or it is the usual work that ecosystems carry out generally. And this work helps in the creation of structural and functional system that we have talked about ecosystem. So it is the way ecosystems operate is the function of ecosystem. And one of the most important work, or one of the most important function of ecosystem is energy flow. Right? In order to maintain various components of ecosystem, there has to be energy flow from base trophic level 1 to next or subsequent trophic level. And that is one of the work that ecosystems do. Fine. So let us discuss what are the functions of ecosystem. And first function is energy. So ecosystem maintains themselves by circulating energy through trophic levels. So how ecosystems maintains themselves? Through energy flow. And this energy flow occurs through trophic level. That means through various biotic components that are there in the ecosystem. Right? Energy flow from producers to subsequent trophic levels. And this energy flow is in the form of 10% rule. That means only 10% of the amount will be transferred. Suppose producers have developed 1000 kilocalories of energy, then primary consumer will get only 100 kilocalories of energy. Secondary consumers will get 10 kilocalories, and tertiary consumer will get only 1 kilocalorie of energy. Fine. So that is the energy flow, which is one of the important functions of the ecosystem. Next. So this flow of energy is always unidirectional. We have discussed that this flow of energy is always unidirectional, or it is non-cyclical. Fine. It is non-cyclical in nature. Can you please tell me, if this flow of energy is unidirectional or non-cyclical, can we say that the role of decomposers is important? Yes, role of decomposers is very important if we consider the flow of energy which is unidirectional. Because in let me give you another example. The other function of ecosystem is nutrient cycling. That means whatever nutrients that are present in the environment, they should be used by biotic components, and whatever biotic components are using, again those nutrients should be refilled in the environment. Fine. So that is nutrient cycling. I am not using word or non-cycle, or I am not saying that nutrient cycling is unidirectional. What I want to say with this word nutrient cycling, it is the cycle that is present in the environment, and that cycle helps in the utilization of nutrients, and once those nutrients are used, it also helps in the replenishing of those nutrients. But that is not the case with energy flow. It is unidirectional. Once energy is produced by producers, only 10% will be given to the next trophic level. Remaining 90% is with the producers. And if that 90% energy is with producers, then decomposers have extremely important role to make sure that that energy is released back in the environment once that particular plant species die. Fine. So as energy flow is unidirectional, the role of decomposers become very important. Now, so this energy flow, as we have discussed, it is between different trophic levels. That means it is between different species, and it can be represented into two forms, or we can represent energy flow in two ways. One is the simple way of flow of energy from one species to another species, that is called as food chain, or the complex flow of energy from one species to many species, and from those many species to another species. Fine. So that is called as food web. So complex flow of energy from one species to different species is food web, and the simplest one is food chain. So now we'll be discussing about these two, food chains and food webs. So first of all, food chain. So what is food chain? Food chain is the transfer of food energy from producers through a series of organisms, from producers to consumers through a series of organisms, with repeated eating and being eaten. So in food chain, there is repeated eating and being eaten up by other species. So that is the rule under food chain. So for example, in this diagram, you can see, suppose grasshoppers. Grasshoppers are eating grasses, and frogs are eating grasshoppers. Right? So this process happens repetitively in food chain. And this is the most simple way of energy flow from trophic levels. But ideally, it do not exist in the environment. It is only a theoretical concept. Food chain is only a theoretical concept. Why I'm saying like that? Why it does not? Why generally it is not present in the environment? What will happen? Can you please tell me why food chains are not present in the environment generally? Energy gets dissipated, or organisms die and get decomposed. No, no. Means, see, what I want to ask, this food chain that we are discussing is a theoretical concept. Ideally, in the nature or in the environment, we we hardly come across food chain, because see, in this food chain, what is the source of, in this diagram that you are seeing on your screen, what is the source of food for frog, or what is the source of energy for a frog? It is grasshopper, right? Suppose grasshoppers, because of certain reason, they go extinct. What will frog eat, right? So if grasshoppers are the only source of food or energy for frog, then if grasshoppers are going extinct, then it would be very difficult for subsequent trophic levels to survive. And that's why they make sure that they diversify their sources of food or energy in order to remain in the environment, in order to keep on existing in the environment. Fine. That's why it is only a theoretical concept. So we have discussed there are two types of food chains. First is grazing food chain. What is grazing food chain? At or for grazing food chain, at the first trophic level, green plants or producers will be there. First trophic level of grazing food chain will be occupied by green plants or producers, and then so on, means the consumers can vary. But the first trophic level, this is important, first trophic level in grazing food chain will always be occupied by producers or green plants. Fine. So that is one of the types of grazing food chain, or one of the type of food chain. Second is detritus food chain. What is the detritus food chain? What is the source of energy in detritus food chain? It is the dead organic matter. Dead organic matter will always be there at first trophic level in a detritus food chain. Fine. So you can see on your screen detritus food chain, where detritus matter is being eaten up by primary consumers. They can be various bacteria. Those bacteria are the source of food material for secondary consumers. They can be small fishes, and those fishes are eaten up by tertiary consumers like otter or walrus, etc. Fine. Next. Next is food web. Now, what is food web? So food web is the feeding relationship that exists in the nature. It is the feeding relationship, or it is the flow of nutrition that exists in the nature. And it is the result of interrelated food chains. It is the result of interrelated food chains. We have talked about food chains. They are linear. Food chains are linear transfer of energy. But food webs, it is complex. Why? Because it is formed because of interrelation of different food chains. Interrelation of different food chains. And with food web, next point, this is very important point. With food web, the survival chance of a species increases. The survival chance of species increases because it can find alternative sources of energy or food. It It can find alternative sources of food or energy. So in this diagram, you can see clearly. So suppose snakes are eating rats. Fine. And also owls or wildcat is eating rats. Then if there is a absence, or if there is extinction of rats because of some reason, then different species can still eat rabbit or goat or any other species that is there in the environment. And because of that, the survival chance of these consumers increases. Fine. And that is nothing but a food web. It increases the survival chance of different organisms. Next now. So next, see, it is not that through trophic levels, it is not that only good energy or only good material will be transferred to the next trophic levels. No, it is not like that. Generally, energy transfer is through trophic levels. But apart from energy, there may be certain aspects which are again transferred from trophic levels only. And those material or those substances may be harmful for the life of those species who are either consuming them or who are transferring them to the subsequent trophic levels. Fine. And that's why these two terms, bioaccumulation and biomagnification, become important. Bioaccumulation and biomagnification become important. Why they are important? Because it is not that through trophic levels only energy or good material is transferred. Even toxic material can be transferred to the subsequent trophic levels. And that's why we should consider these two words, bioaccumulation and biomagnification. So what is bioaccumulation? As the name suggests, bioaccumulation is the accumulation of toxic material in the body of a particular species whose concentration is more than the concentration in the environment. For example, suppose there is particulate matter present in our environment, but the quantity or the concentration of particulate matter in the environment is more than its concentration in our body, then it will not be considered as bioaccumulation. When the concentration of particulate matter in our body increases than the concentration in the environment, then it is considered as a bioaccumulation. Why? Because once the concentration of those toxic material increases in the body of of an individual or in the body of a particular species, then only those toxic material will act upon, will be able to act or will be able to show their adverse impact on the body of that species. Fine. So you can read first statement. Bioaccumulation is the gradual accumulation of pollutants, chemicals, chronic poisoning. Chemicals often lead to chronic poisoning or other substances in an organism. Next point. Bioaccumulation occurs when the rate of loss of the substance from the body of the organism through catabolism, that means through breakdown processes that occur inside our bodies, or through excretion, is lower than the rate of accumulation. Fine. Suppose we are inhaling particulate matters and we are exhaling particulate matters. When the concentration of inhaled particulate matters is more than the exhaled particulate matters, then we can safely conclude that particulate matters have accumulated inside our body. That is bioaccumulation. Fine. So the rate of excretion or the rate of giving out those toxic material is lower than their accumulation rate. That is bioaccumulation. Now, what is biomagnification? See, as the name suggests, Now it has accumulated in the body of the species. What happens in biomagnification? The concentration of those accumulated toxic materials increases. Right? So biomagnification. It is a tendency of contaminants to increase in concentration as they move from one trophic level to another trophic level. It is the tendency of contaminant to increase in concentration. And why this concentration increases, or why there is increase in the concentration? See, for example, if suppose there is a lake which is contaminated through mercury poisoning or mercury pollution, so that mercury may subsequently enter in the body of fishes that are living in that particular lake. And if there is a species, or if there is a community of otters that is feeding on those fishes from that polluted lake, then those otters will be eating lot many fishes. And that's why the concentration of the pollutant that they are getting from those fishes will accumulate, or it will increase. Right? So how concentration increases? It is because of, it is the result of natural flow of food material from one trophic level to another trophic. But in order to biomagnify, these pollutants or these contaminants should exhibit certain characteristics. Without these characteristics, it is not possible for those contaminants to bioaccumulate in the bodies of next trophic level species. What are those characteristics? Most important characteristic is they should be long lived. That means the contaminant should not be reduced to simpler forms by the processes that are carried out in our body or in the body of a species. Fine. So they should be long lived. That means they should not be broken down. Means they should the contaminant should not be broken down to simpler forms because of various processes. Fine. Second, they should be mobile. That means they have the tendency to get pass on from one trophic level to the next trophic level. They should be mobile. Thirdly, they should be soluble in fats. If they are soluble in fats, then the chance of those contaminants being removed from our body reduces. If they are soluble in fat, then the excretion or the removal of those contaminants decreases. And lastly, they should be biologically active. Those contaminants should be biologically active. What does that mean? Biologically active means, suppose if a contaminant is there inside the body of a particular species, and if it is not affecting that species, then can we call it a contaminant? No, we cannot call it as a contaminant. And that's why that particular contaminant should be able to showcase the harmful impact on the body of the species. That means it should be biologically active. It should harm that particular species biologically. Then only we can call it as a contaminant. And this is the characteristic that a contaminant should exhibit in order to biomagnify from one species to another species. One more characteristic you can include, that is contaminants should be insoluble in water. They should be insoluble in water. Why? Because if they are soluble in water, they can be easily eliminated from the body through urination or other processes. Fine. So these are the two very important terms which are associated with the energy flow or with the ecological pyramid. Why? Because ecological pyramid is not only about the flow of energy, it can also be about flow of contaminants. Next now. Next, a related term or a related concept is of productivity of ecosystem. Productivity of ecosystem. Fine. So now let us discuss this productivity of ecosystem, and there are a number of types of productivities. We'll be discussing those types now. So what is productivity? See, it is nothing but the amount of organic matter that is accumulated or that is present at a particular trophic level. The amount of organic matter present at a particular moment or at a particular time for a particular trophic level. For example, producers. If producers are producing certain amount of organic matter, then that is their productivity. And generally, primary productivity is associated with producers. The productivity which is related to producers is primary productivity, because they are the producers of different energy or different organic matter with the help of energy, solar energy and other components from atmosphere or from soil. Fine. So what is productivity? It is the amount of organic matter accumulated in any unit time. So obviously, if it is a concept related to time, then with time it will vary. For example, suppose we can say that in the month of May, productivity of this particular tree is different than its productivity in December. So it is the concept which may change with respect to time. There are two types of productivities. First is primary productivity and second is secondary productivity. And as we have discussed, primary productivity is associated with producers. It is associated with producers. And it is defined as the rate at which radiant energy is stored by photosynthetic and chemosynthetic activity of producers. It is the rate at which energy that is received from sun is converted into the chemical energy through photosynthesis or chemosynthesis. Photosynthesis, we all know. What is chemosynthesis? It is the production of food material, or it is the production of energy by certain species of organism with the use of chemicals. They are not dependent on sunlight. They use chemicals, for example, sulfur or nutrients like sulfur for the production of energy. Fine. So whatever amount of energy is produced through these activities, it can be considered as a primary productivity of that producer. Fine. So primary productivity can again be divided into gross primary productivity and net primary productivity. What is gross? Gross primary productivity. That means the amount of energy which is present with that particular producer, including the amount of energy used by that producer during the time when we are measuring the productivity. Okay, let me put it in other words. So suppose at 4 o'clock, you want to measure the productivity of a particular producer. So at 4 o'clock, the plant will have certain amount of energy that is stored inside the plant, And at the same time, if you are going for measuring productivity, plant will not stop its activities. It will use certain energy for its activities. So gross energy will be the energy stored by plant at that particular time, plus the energy that is used by plant for its activities during that particular measurement period. That is gross energy or gross primary productivity, GPP. Fine. What can be net primary productivity? Second type of primary productivity is net primary productivity. What is net primary productivity? It is simple. It is gross primary productivity minus respirational loss. So whatever energy that plants are using for their different activities, that energy will not be considered as a part of net primary productivity. So simply from gross primary productivity, you have to subtract the respirational loss occurred during the measuring period. Respirational loss occurred during the measuring period will be subtracted from GPP. Then you get net primary productivity. Fine. Now, second type of productivity is secondary productivity. What is secondary productivity? Secondary productivity is the productivity associated with, or it is the organic matter associated with consumers. Primary was associated with producers. This is the organic matter or energy stored at the level of consumers. When we talk about consumers, we are including all the trophic levels of consumers. Secondary productivity is associated with all the trophic levels except first trophic level of producers. Fine. And that's why secondary productivity is quite mobile. It is quite dynamic. It keeps on moving from one organism to another organism. Fine. So that is secondary productivity, which is the amount of energy which is present at the level of consumers. But there is one more concept, that is net productivity. So what is net productivity? Net productivity is the amount of organic matter not used by heterotrophs. That is the organic matter that is not used by consumers. So let me explain net productivity in comparison with net primary productivity. So what is net primary productivity? Net primary productivity is the amount of energy or organic matter that is present with plants. We have subtracted respirational loss while calculating net primary productivity. That means the amount, whatever amount is left with producers is net primary productivity. Similarly, whatever amount of energy or organic matter is left with consumers, it is considered as net productivity. I hope it is clear. You can say that net productivity is equal to secondary productivity minus respirational loss. Net productivity is equal to secondary productivity minus respirational loss. Fine. So this is about the first function of ecosystem, that is energy flow. And see, you can see the box on this particular PPT. Whatever is there on inside the box, it is not exactly the function of ecosystem, but that particular topic is related to energy flow. That's why I have discussed it here only. But I have kept it in a box in order to differentiate it, or in order to maintain the flow of topics. Okay, so I hope yesterday you must have received the PPTs. So these PPTs you will receive today. So let me take you back and let me just explain you. So we were discussing about energy flow, right? So energy flow, under that we have discussed about different, we have discussed about the concept, then different flows of energy that occur in the ecosystem, that means food chain and food web. Then we discussed about grazing and detritus food chain. Then about food web, and then we came to a different concept, but a related concept. And that's why there is a box for this concept. Fine. So these four PPTs are in box. Now, so I think we'll be concluding today's session. So let me give you some questions that are previous year questions. So these are the previous year questions from the discussion that we have done till now in today's session. So kindly answer, read these questions and please answer. These are very simple questions. Previous year questions they are. Kajal, did you read the question? You answered it very fast. Okay, fine. So with reference to food chains in ecosystem, consider the following statements. First, a food chain illustrates the order in which a chain of organisms feed upon each other. We have discussed that it is a flow of energy. That means it is a feeding pattern only. What does food chain represents or it illustrates? It illustrates food pattern or feeding pattern only. So first statement is correct. Second, food chains are found within the populations of a species. So yesterday, see, you have to apply these things that we have discussed. Yesterday, while discussing population and community, I have discussed that population will be occupied at one trophic level and community will be there at different trophic levels. So what means food chain will be of a community, and obviously it will not represent a particular species of organism. So second statement is a wrong statement. So you should remove B and C. So you are left with 1 and D, and you need not worry about third statement because you know that one should be there in your answer. That's why A should be your answer. But still, we will read third statement. A food chain illustrates the number of each organism which are eaten up by others. No, it is not the numbers. Food chains does not represent number. What does means? How numbers are illustrated? They are represented by pyramid of numbers, not by food chains. So answer is A. Next. So while discussing, we have answered this question. Answer is 2 and 3. While discussing components of ecosystem, under biotic components, I have discussed about viruses, why they are not a part of decomposers, because they are neither living nor non-living organisms or nor non-living. So answer for this question is 2 and 3 only. See, we will be gradually increasing the difficulty level. As this is only our second, gradually increase our difficulty level. Fine. And the last question for the day. Read this question and kindly answer. Kopal is saying C and Kajal is saying A. Okay. Any other answer? Juliana is saying C. even Jhalak see. Fine. So let us discuss which one of the following is the best description of the term ecosystem. So someone has answered A. Let us discuss A. A community of organisms interacting with one another. See, while discussing ecosystem, we have referred to structure of ecosystem. And under structure of ecosystem, we have discussed about two components. First is abiotic and second is biotic component, right? So first statement is only about biotic component. It is not considering abiotic component, though it is telling you that yes, it is the result of interaction of communities. But interaction can not only be within community, it should also with the environment or with the abiotic components. Fine. That's why A is not the answer. B, that part of the earth which is inhabited by living organism, it is not, it is biosphere, we all know. C, a community of organisms together with the environment in which they live. Yes, here it is talking about both community of organisms, and environment. That means the leftover part, that means abiotic component of the environment in which they live. Though it is not using word interaction, it is using word living, and living cannot be in isolation. Fine. That's why C is the answer. Fine. So the best description for this term ecosystem is C, a community of organisms together with the environment in which they live. Fine. So next is D option, the flora and fauna of a geographical area. No, it is called as biogeographical zone. Fine. So we will discuss about biogeographical zones of India, because if we start discussing biogeographical zones of world, it would be very difficult to finish this particular subject, because you will have to consider every country or every continent. So biogeographic zones of India we will discuss, but biomes of the world we will discuss for sure. Fine. So this is about today's class. Fine. So I'll be concluding this class. So thank you very much for your time. See you tomorrow, same time. Tomorrow we will talk about other functions of ecosystem, and also towards end we will certainly talk about biomes. Tomorrow's session would be very important because we will be starting with biomes, and initially uh, under biomes we will talk about the factors that are influencing biomes, and then we will talk about the different world biomes, and then we will shift towards the aquatic ecosystem or aquatic biome. And when we conclude all these biomes, we will separately discuss biomes from India. Fine. So this is the session for today. Fine. Thank you. Thank you very much.